Hello and welcome. I'm Jason L. Jones, and you're watching Head to Head with UATV. The Ukrainian parliament has adopted a law on the State Bureau of Investigation. One of the amendments states that investigators from the Prosecutor General's office will be transferred to the Bureau. This will ensure the continuity of investigations into the killings of the Euromaidan protesters in 2014. To discuss this new law, we are joined in the studio by Yevhen Yenin, Deputy Executive Director of the Ukrainian Institute for the Future. Hello, Yevhen. It's nice to meet you.
Hello, Jason.
Yeah, so, what is your opinion on this new bill? And what are the prime provisions that you would like to highlight?
For sure, it's one of the crucial pieces of legislation passed by the current convocation of the parliament. Incidentally, the initiator of this draft law was personally Mr. Truba, who has been reshuffled according to the yesterday's law. So the idea was to reinforce the director's powers, that's first, to make this body more independent. So it's going to be a totally independent body like NABU. So it has been taken out of the umbrella of the Cabinet of Ministers. And of course, simplified procedure of transition of investigators and prosecutors who have been engaged in the investigation of Maidan cases.
Okay. And so you say it's...
But as I mentioned, incidentally, Mr. Truba was one of the initiators, and he became a kind of victim of last-minute amendment, according to which the whole leadership of the authority is expected to be reshuffled. Okay. So, first off, you said that it was voted in to make the SBI more independent. Yeah.
Do you think the parliament will try to maintain some type of control?
Look, it's a kind of good picture, speaking of the additional instruments of the parliament to take control of any law enforcement. But when we get to the ground, it appears to be difficult from the parliamentarian position to assess the effectiveness of any law enforcement.
Okay. They're going to be transferring over investigators from the Prosecutor General's office to the SBI. Do you think that's a good thing?
Actually, it's a kind of symbol of continuity. In fact, I don't think that it's of crucial importance, as we've got this investigation for 5 years. And first of all, the efficiency of all these processes is about to be subject of scrutiny. And instead of just physical transfer of people, we have to check what was the topic of their investigation, what part of these investigators were really engaged in the investigation of Maidan crime scene, and whose authorities have been dedicated to other topics, not directly related to Maidan cases. But, of course, that's important thing to provide continuity. The discussion is about the methods how to achieve this goal.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So we have sound bites of the MPs talking about this new bill. Let's have a listen.
What's very important is that the Maidan cases have been saved. Thanks to public pressure, we persuaded our colleagues to vote in favor of this law. Within 5 days, a new acting head of the State Investigation Bureau will be appointed. Mr. Truba and his deputies will be fired. Now we will have sole leadership instead of collective irresponsibility.
The main idea of the president's bill was making the State Investigation Bureau more independent. Today, it's a central executive body subordinate to the Cabinet of Ministers. All of its regulations are approved by the Cabinet. That is why it was decided to equate the Investigation Bureau to the status of Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau.
So going off of that, the director, previous, has been removed. What's going to be the process of selecting the new director, and when do they hope to be appointed? does that?
According to the new draft law, there is a new procedure of selection of the leadership of this authority. We all remember pretty lengthy and bureaucratic procedure of election of the previous one. And we always remember unsatisfaction, even deeper satisfaction of the key international partners of Ukraine of the results of such a selection process. Hopefully this one is expected to be better, but let's look.
Okay, and where would they be looking for the ideal candidate?
According to the current draft, according to the current law, there are some criteria or requirements with regards to new director, who is about to be the single head and leader of this authority instead of so-called collective approach, which appeared to be ineffective.
Okay. And so the SBI system procedures for the SBI, there'll be new procedures for selecting the approving the organizational structure of the SBI, as well as the procedures for the territorial setting up the territorial departments. What do you think how that will work out?
What's the key problem is that making this authority more independent, like NABU, like SBU, we confronted the situation when it's pretty difficult to describe the whole procedure of check and balances with regards to this body, as the Constitution of Ukraine clearly envisages the limits of powers of the President, of the Parliament and the Cabinet of Ministers. All of them are clearly depicted in the Constitution. So it's a little bit difficult to adapt the current framework of these powers with regards to the activity of new body. That's the key one. Of course, the lawmakers were about to elaborate a new mechanism how to balance the powers, the huge powers of the director. What we are speaking about? The total independence of the unit which is responsible for internal control, so the procedures of selection, of appointment, and second, the head of this internal control unit are only on the basis of limited list of violations allegedly committed by this head of unit. Then, of course, the procedure of parliamentary control, which is in practice pretty limited one. The third element, of course, is a possibility to fire a newly appointed director only on the grounds of closed list of requirements. But the risk is that this is a kind of precedent of regulating of labor relations using this specific law, as the previous law already contained the closed list of all those situations when the director could be sacked. Now we see that it's also possible using the new law. So it's not only about the legislative provision, that's about the spirit of the legal culture within the country. That's how we could manage the situation in a proper way.
Okay, all right. And there are unsolved issues. What do you think the new leadership will do about those?
First of all, we have to look who would be assigned as the acting director. According to the new law, within 5-day period, the president is about to appoint acting director during the time period when the new one would be selected and approved in accordance with the new procedures. And as if we look at the previous experience, one could remember that the process took place for a year approximately. So there is a small risk on how this person would be regulated, whom he would be accountable, and it bears additional risk with regards to his political balanced approach. As the scandal of leakages from the office of the current one showed or confirmed, in fact, of allegations everybody is speaking about the huge scale of usage of the law enforcement within the political games.
Okay. And do you have any idea of who the interim director might be, or is this?
I have no idea, but there is a risk.
Okay, okay. And like Nabu, there are pros and cons. The SBI has been, the new SBI has been, compared to Nabu being, independent. Do you think there are any pros and cons of this?
Yes, of course. As the key issue, as for me, is the pretty clear structure of the authorities of criminal justice. That's how the system should be started. And only after a general idea, as it was promised by the current Prosecutor General, to elaborate a kind of new strategy of reforming criminal justice, there should be a process of possible reformation of all the stakeholders, as we could reform either prosecution or pre-trial investigation bodies, but everything would be in vain if we don't touch judiciary, as this is the cornerstone of all their legal processes. So everything should be in line with the same principles. And when we are speaking of the totally independent and politically unbiased system of criminal justice, we should see that there are huge risks, as in accordance to the American records, current Prosecutor General is 100% person of the president. Since now the head of SBI is about to be appointed by the same president, of course it should be confirmed by the amendment to the Constitution, which needs approval of 300 MPs, not earlier than late February of the next year. So it's not one-day process. And we could elaborate ideal laws, but everything depends on implementation of this law and on judiciary as well.
Okay. And I was also curious if in looking at the new formation, the reformation of the SBI, does the country look at other countries, for example, as a model, of a potential, or systems at work and whatnot?
Look, there is a huge temptation just to use somebody else's system. Usually people draw some separate examples from the whole picture, but all these pieces of experience are not to be effective, as we should look at the overall or entire system of the organization of criminal justice. And of course we should apply this foreign experience, taking into account our own current situation, our own traditions, political situation in the parliament, and so on and so forth. And of course it would take some time until the system starts working in a proper way.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Yevhen, for all your insights. I wish we had more time, but I hope to have you back on another time. So
thanks, Jason.
Thank you. So this was Yevhen Yenin, Deputy Director at the Ukrainian Institute for the Future. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned to UATV.